What did I tell you? Cleave yourself away from them bums you hang with, I said.
Well, I'm in therapy now.
That's a damn shame. You all listened to that pissmeyer, Arthur Bucco. He was the worst of the bunch. I told you that.
How do you own the restaurant? He's doing great.
Bucco?
Yeah.
So what? The exception that proves the rule.
That's right. That Artie Bucco, that piece of shit. Welcome to Cut to Black, a Sopranos Sit Down. My name is Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
My name is Jacob Burrows, and I've seen 63 episodes of The Sopranos. And this is certainly one of them. This is a very Sopranos episode. It's number 63, or season 5, episode 11, The Test Dream. Who put this one together, Jim?
This episode is written by David Chase, the series creator, also co-written by Matthew Weiner, the creator of Mad Men, directed by longtime series director Alan Coulter. Now, this has some of your favorite stuff, Jacob. Dream sequences, am I wrong?
Yeah, I assume we must have gone into this when we talked about, I don't know, every episode of The Sopranos that has a dream sequence. It's not that I hate them, but I kind of hate them. Like, they're not my jam. Meanwhile, you, I would say that you are overly enthusiastic about them, so I assume this is your favorite episode, you piece of shit.
It's not my favorite, but yes, I am a fan. I believe we've probably mentioned it in the past. I'm a big fan of the Buffy episode Restless, which is all dream sequences as well. I like that with this episode is that, you know, it's very similar to something like Funhouse, which is, I believe, the season 2 finale, when Tony has the dreams about Big Pussy and how he is a FBI informant, how his subconscious is telling him that. But with that, like, it's broken up, like, because Tony's sick, so he keeps kind of going in and out of dreams. This one, it's like a 20-minute, like, they're like, fuck it, you're in it. You can't go anywhere. This is The Sopranos. You're watching this dream. You're watching this whole dream.
There's no fucking subplot about Artie Bucco trying to get mold out of his basement or anything like that. It's all dream sequence all the time. And it's, funny you should bring up Funhouse, because I think that was a way more efficient way of doing this, where the revelation actually mattered, where it was like his subconscious knows something, he's been picking up clues here. Here the thing is, oh, you should have killed, you should have killed your cousin. You should have killed Tony to prevent this from happening, which he would have known just being awake. But this is him wrestling with that idea, I suppose, in his subconscious.
It is, but it also is, and I'm kind of taking this from Sopranos Session, Alan Sepinwall's book on The Sopranos, with interviews by David Chase, Cut to Black, brought to you by The Sopranos Sessions. They do talk about how it's more than that, though. Whereas Funhouse, those dreams are very specifically about Big Pussy, and this dream, yes, a lot of it is about Tony B, but it's also kind of Tony as a whole, because it's like him dealing with stuff with Carmilla and how that relationship is, and just kind of how he's a little bit more self-aware because he's been going to therapy, and he can kind of understand sometimes he's in a dream and almost try to pick up on what he's trying to tell himself. So I do agree with that take. I think it's it's about more. Some would say it's about Tony Soprano as a whole.
Yeah, you know how I like to learn about characters through their actions and the things they do in their lives, not while they're fucking snoozing around.
This is classic David Chase, and it's like, I feel like I always knew this from just my original watch of The Sopranos, but doing this show and doing this rewatch and kind of breaking down episode by episode, and even like we've gone to direct quotes from David Chase, I realize the contempt he has for people that watch movies and TV, but he writes movies and TV, so he gets to really fuck with you, and I think it's great. Like, I guess I enjoy that he's like negging me, because it's so perfect. Because rather than you could do this episode and have the way the beginning plays out with Angelo getting clipped, and then you follow Tony B, and then have this big mafioso shootout that puts things in motion with the Soprano family in New York. But they basically have that's all happening, but they're like, no, we're in Tony's dream, all that's happening. Like we're hanging out in Tony's dream. You can just imagine what's happening, because Tony's in New York as well. He's at the Plaza Hotel. So it's like you can just imagine what's happening like 4 blocks away from where Tony is. Shit's going down, but we're hanging out in the dream.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that David Chase wrote this one. I feel like there's scenes or there's episodes where it's like, oh, this one's got a lot of action in it. Oh, fuck it. Give it to some assistant or whatever. They'll sort it out. Anyone can write action. I'm here for the dream sequences, bitch. I wanna really fuck with y'all on how you think that this sequence of events should play out. And I mean, in theory and even in practice, I don't have like a huge grudge against it. I'm playing it up a little bit, but I'm also kind of like watching this and Tony's looking at the TV and he's in the TV and then Carmela's like, oh, that's not your life, and it's a cowboy, and then he's on a horse and I'm like, this is fucking bullshit.
And then yes, David Chase did talk about the title. The test dream, it refers to dreams you have where you turn up late for a test in school or you're wearing no clothing, meaning you're unprepared for a test or another task you have to face. As Tony is unprepared to murder his coach in his dream and unprepared for the dilemma caused by Tony B's action. So yeah, I mean, that's all there. That all checks out. What I do enjoy, though, as well, is that even before we're in the dream, like weird shit's happening and it's kind of shot in a weird way where it almost... Well, maybe more so when he gets to the hotel. Like, that's kind of shot in a weird way where it's not a dream, but it feels like one. And just the fact that it opens with Valentina lighting up on fire.
Yeah, no, I was going to... I was going to text you. I was like, well, I just didn't know if you'd rewatched it yet. I was going to go like what, 2 minutes in, I'm like, what the fuck? This is going to be a crazy episode. And yes, it was. Not necessarily the way I thought. But yeah, that is something that would happen in the dream, but they love that sort of thing as well. Doing something that's, just someone getting hit by a cab or whatever, but they don't die. They're just kind of bruised or lighting themselves on fire because they're shouting between rooms, not paying attention. It's just such a weird way to do this, because if her being set on fire was in any way significant to the plot, we would call bullshit on it, If that was like part of the story, we'd go, it's so convenient. She just happens to get lit on fire. But now it's like the only thing is how it affects Tony's, like, what he's up to those days, and he was going to break up anyway and whatever. So it's just a thing that is weird, and it's still, they managed to make it make sense, I guess.
Yes, yeah, because we open Tony and Valentina in mid coitus, and then Tony gets up and then she's like, are you hungry? And Tony even says, like, one thing I like about this is, like, because Tony's not really hungry, he's like, no, you don't have to make me anything, like, don't bother. But she decides to make something, and then, as you mentioned, she's shouting to the other room, and he's even like, didn't I say I don't like this shouting between rooms shit? So he gives her 2 warnings that, hey, you're gonna set yourself on fire, stop.
Thing is, she's not a little bit on fire. I don't know what this robe is made out of, but she's immediately like an extra in Game of Thrones running around on fire. Like, it's not a little, it's because the whole of her is on fire really quick. And I don't know, I guess gas ovens are really dangerous. So I don't have one of those. So yeah, but he just puts a blanket on her, and she's gonna be fine. She's gonna be just fine. It's just 2nd degree burns anyway.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's because of her long hair as well. I guess that can catch up pretty quick. But yeah, you're right. She's completely, like, almost engulfed. And I think, to your point, yes, I think what helps us also is that Valentina has, like, barely been on the show, and she's kind of even commenting on that in, like, a meta sense, where she's like, you're not with your wife, and I barely see you anymore. She wants them to get, like, a beach house or something like that. And then,
I thought she wanted them to go on vacation, but yeah. And
no, you're right. Yeah, go to Sandals, the jewel of Antigua.
Right. And I mean, we've seen him like sleep with, we've seen him post-coitus with like a dermatology nurse or whatever, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So we know, like, so I'm even like at the start, like, is that it's Valentina. Yeah, we haven't seen her in forever. And then she's like, I haven't seen you in forever. And then she's set on fire. And I'm like, Sopranos is weird. So we go to the casino. Got to see Tony B. and him pal around with his best friend. Like, they've established this already, but it becomes apparent why this is here, obviously, because it's the driver of the whole fucking episode. I forget that character's name, the one who gets clipped at the start there.
Yeah, I forgot to, but it's Angelo. I pulled it up. Yeah, it's Angelo.
Yeah.
And then they're making comments about how like Rusty and Carmine, they're they're not paying him, like they're not giving him the whole amount for the hit he did. It seems like it's been a while since he did the hit as well. And then they kind of have this thing where he's talking about it in front of, I forget if that's supposed to be his son that's with him. And then I'm thinking, and then you kind of think like, oh, that's where this is going. Like, word's going to get out. He's kind of just doing this somewhat in the open, paying Tony B for the hit on Peeps. And then, giving him the plaque that says, because I'm the boss, that's why. And you just, like, when you're watching the episode, you're like, oh, I know where this is going. Tony's going to see that. He's going to freak out. Here we go. Things are going somewhere. And it's like, no, it's going way different than you expect.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, no, that's very true. It does not go the way you'd expect at all. I felt that as far as, like, everyone just kind of knows that Tony did it. Like Tony B. So it doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, getting paid for it is one thing, but yeah, I think he says it's his son. A character like, my guess is never going to see this character again. He's just there to make the dynamics of the scene different. That's my guess anyway, because he says he's in like architectural salvage or something, or so I don't know. He just strips copper wire from things, or maybe he's in the private sector as far as I read it. So I don't really know. And I don't know if I'm the boss, that's why, is a specific reference to one of their old, like, we like to do impressions from this and that show, maybe one of those, or it's just a really fun plaque.
Yeah, I guess it's just a fun plaque, but I just see the whole thing of how, like, they've played it where Tony, Tony B, obviously, he's seeing how Tony has all this stuff, but he never kind of externalizes that. Like, it's more that Tony Soprano feels bad for what happened with Tony B. And I just assume in Sopranos fashion that'll be an issue. But then it just seems like, we'll never see that plaque again. Who cares? We're moving on.
It's just to show how they get along, and like they're in this sort of back room of the casino. So he's running this nice, successful casino, but then he goes into this other room, and it's kind of like, you're wearing a nice suit, but it's like we're in the boiler room or whatever. Like, there's shit all over the place here, but I'm gonna put this in a place of prominence, and puts it up on the wall. But they're all loving it, just having a great time.
Yeah, and then we have Tony Soprano in the burn ward with Valentina. And I mean, she looks like shit because she was just on fire, and she's all drugged up on painkillers or something. She's like, "You're gonna operate on me." Tony's trying to explain, like, "No, it's me, Tony." And then she's mad, and then she asks if she's gonna operate on him again. And yeah, it's not an opportune time for Tony to break it off.
Yeah, no, as he says later, how's it gonna look? But then, like, who even knows you're going out with this woman? Who would even care? But how's it going to look to him, I guess?
Yeah.
So Angelo is picking up a box of whatever at Home Depot or wherever. I don't know these places.
Yeah, it's like some sort of grandkid or something like that, because it looked like it was like a baby thing or something.
And we see an auspicious car that we've seen before drive by, and they're just asking, "Hey, come have a word with whoever." Right?
With Johnny Sack. Yeah, like Johnny wants.
Yeah, of course.
And all I'm thinking, I mean, I guess when you're part of that life, you don't watch a lot of mob movies or something, because all I'm thinking is like, wait, aren't these the guys you're kind of warring against right now? Wouldn't you be a little afraid at what they're doing? But, hey, it's like, hey, look what you did to my car. Oh, I'll go talk to him later. I mean, I guess there's a kind of a knowing moment before he turns around, but he still does turn his back to them, and they come up, start choking him, throw him in the trunk. And it is kind of a callback to Phil Leotardo, Frank Vincent, the actor. He was also in a trunk in Goodfellas, wrapped up, and they end up shooting him and stabbing him. So it's kind of like a little callback to that, but he gets to do the shooting in this scene.
Yes. I suppose it's supposed to be a war by proxy. It's supposed to be a Cold War, although it has obviously been heating up. But it's like we got someone outside our crew to whack your guy. We're just not delivering bikes to Tony Soprano, Vespas. Like we're all beating up security guards and like. I'm sure the guy who does Johnny Sack's landscaping, he's probably gotten beaten up as well, just for good measure. So it's all like, well, we can't touch a made man or whatever, but we'll fuck up whatever. So there's some sense of like, yeah, I mean, we're kind of warring, but like, still, Angelo's the guy who's like, wait, you did what, Little Carmine? Like, wait, are we sure this is a great idea? And then of course he's the one who's gonna get got. And I almost did believe him. I almost thought like, yeah, they're gonna drive him off before they kill him at least, but it's really just like, nah, you're done.
Yep. So this is the death of Angelo. So we need to go ahead and throw this up on the old counter, putting it up at hold on, putting it up at 49. Is that correct? Are we on the same?
Right. It's correct. We're at 49 deaths on the show and 16 walkouts at the moment. For everyone keeping track.
And I do like I was just gonna say I do like the Phil has to reference how he just had that car worked on, and he's like, "Oh, look at this dent on the back."
Just have fucking work done. Yeah. So then we have a scene with Tony. Like after this dramatic event, Tony's just kind of wandering around his house, hating it. The paper's been thrown out, and there's enchiladas, and as he says to Tony, "This is the new one." Like he just walks out and drives off to see Tony B, who obviously knows what happened. Like, although at the time I didn't put two and two together. I was like, yeah, of course Tony's gonna go mad when he finds out. But I didn't think that like, yeah, he already knows that's why he's acting this way, because I am a fool.
Well, no, I didn't pick that up either. Because what I like about this scene is that we've always seen Tony B kind of like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, I know he loves Tony Soprano, but Tony Soprano clearly loves Tony B more than him. And especially Tony S is in his like therapy mode, and Tony B never really responds well to that. So it kind of, I read it initially as like, oh, he's just like, here we go. Like Tony, because Tony's just complaining, and he's always complaining. And now he's complaining about the Guatemalan, and she's always comes through with the enchiladas. And he's also talking about how he wants to get with Charmaine, which is great. He just wants to steal Artie's wife, and he thinks, well, maybe that could be a girl I could be with. And I guess kind of the point is that he just wants Carmela back, right? Is that kind of him subconsciously? Because it's like Carmela is Charmaine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I guess that could be it. I mean, he's talking, like you said, he's in therapy mode. He's even sitting down like he's with Melfi, and he says like, the burning hair of Valentina. And then he's like, oh, that's what the last thing Carmine said before he had his stroke. And he's just thinking about death and all of that. And Tony Egg is so distracted, just rattling around the toys. So yeah, that's exactly how I read it as well, that he's just kind of annoyed at having Tony there, and that he's got his kids, and like nothing's coming up Tony Egg. Well, and obviously,
and Tony Soprano even has a line where he goes like, why does this shit always happen to me? Like, complaining about, isn't he? I mean, it's horrific if your guma or someone gets lit on fire in front of you. That's one thing, but just he's such a like baby. So I kind of understand, but I do like how this is shot too, because it does feel frenetic, and they are kind of like focusing on how fidgety and anxious Tony B is. So it does seem like more of a reveal. I do want to call out, I did see in one of the Sopranos face groups like yesterday, Facebook groups. The twins, Tony B's twins, are actually New York City cops now. I saw them in their NYC gear, like at their graduation or something. So good for them.
Nice, both of them. That's like a movie. Twin cops. They could pull all sorts of stunts with that. They could shoot all sorts of innocent people, even twice as many as your average cop. After Tony says his line of like, what does this always happen to me? Like the look that Tony Egg gives him is indicative of how like, oh, you're the fucking big boss. And I think he's said, and other characters in general, like he should be like on top of the world, because he is, and he should feel like it, but he's just always fucking miserable, always like beating up the bartender and all this shit, and then Tony just has to deal with it while also dealing with his kids.
Yeah, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think the fact that like Tony B won't just get Tony a Coke is like a weird, I'm not like your servant type thing, because it's like first he asks his mother to get it, and then he has to yell for the twins to come. It's like, just get up and get a fucking Coke for Tony Soprano, right?
Yeah. Nah, he's done with that now. He's one of the big shots now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have him then checking into the plaza, which, like you said, the whole thing is very lost in translation. Bill Murray sort of wandering around, like looking at things. He's just drives up and there's, are you part of this wedding party? Like, no. And goes in and there's like wedding pictures being taken and just sort of methodical stuff of him like giving over his credit card so he can swipe it for any extra charges and blah blah. And yeah, it's a weird sort of move into a different world for him. And I guess, I mean, they could have made his mother's house look even more shitty, but it is still a very obvious contrast that he's just gone kind of like, wait a minute, I am the big boss. I should be on top of the world. Actually, I know where that is. It's the Plaza Hotel. The biggest room you got, please. And that's what he does. And
then even the fact that Melfi walks by, it kind of adds to, I get it, like the whole surrealist like take as far as these are going, even though this is real life, because it's like, I mean, I know he's run into her out of therapy before, but it's just kind of a weird thing. And plus, he's using like a fake credit card, like a fake name, Mr. Petragula. Yeah. And then even the shot, like when he goes into the room and it kind of, he opens the curtain on the window and then we see Central Park. There's a lot of good stuff. I like just kind of the vibe it's setting and kind of the mood that it's putting you in as it's kind of lulling you to sleep for your dreams in a way.
Yes. And I mean, Tony is like, he said, I'm so annoyed by everything around me. I gotta get out of here. I'm just going to the hotel. But then when he's here, he doesn't have anything to do. He's just kind of, it stripped away all the stuff around him that he constantly has to react to, and there's things that always rile him up and cause him to get mad, or just in general stuff he has to deal with. And here it's like, I've so detached myself from where I usually am that I'm like, wait, who am I? Like, you're losing yourself. You're in like an immersion pod of like there's, or sensory deprivation pod, I mean, of like, there's nothing around you causing you input, so he's just kind of wandering around like the big weird bear he is outside their house, and laying on the bed, having a shower, flipping between channels as he's wont to do, just like last time when you just saw something about shipping containers and Al Qaeda, and he's like, oh, this is a big deal, and now he just sees an ad for some escorts, like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do that too. Like, he just takes whatever input is there because he's just like a blank slate in these moments. Yeah, and actually like really lonely too. Like it's very lonely, and it's pathetic that he calls Charmaine, like they hint that like this is not the first time. Oh yeah, whoever this is, like, you better stop. So like Tony just he sits there, gets an idea, calls Charmaine up on the phone. What is he gonna do? What is he gonna say? What is his plan? I mean, I do think it's like an interesting view at these quiet, lonely moments with Tony Soprano. I mean, he's smiling when she's just saying hello, so that was the point. He's not going to have a conversation. He just wants to hear her voice because, like you said, this is not really for her, because he even says to Tony Eggs that, like, she's this and that. She's the kind of woman, like, I could spend my life with or whatever, like, a good woman. And, like, so he's projecting all of that. Like you said, probably just wants Carmilla, but even more so, doesn't want this weird, lonely existence that he has where he gets room service and sits and gets drunk, like, eating in his robe, this very expensive meal and everything. But steals the paper. Yeah. And we even get some crossfades in there, I think, in the edits of, like, to even make it more sort of, like, yeah, just weird and dreamlike sort of thing. He goes out to rob a newspaper. But yeah, who is it that calls and tells him that the hit's been done? Silvio? Oh, yeah, I believe it's Silvio. Yeah, Silvio leaves. That's right. Yeah, because he gets a message or something, right? Trying to think what. Oh yeah, because first he gets a message, and then he tries to call Tony B.
And yeah, I believe it's Silvio that calls him. He tries to call Tony B, and we kind of get a glimpse into the alternate episode where we're with Tony B, and all this action happens as he's on the, on the road, ready to do a hit. But we're back with Tony, and then he calls the casino, and then he calls like Tony B's mother, and of course then he talks to Paulie, I believe, and yeah, he can't get a hold of him. He knows shit's about to go down.
Yeah. And I mean, even now, it took me a sec. I was like, yeah, of course he's upset. But I was even like, wait, was that Silvio, or did Tony call and tell him Angelo got it and then hung up and then didn't answer when he called? But it was a message, and I didn't follow this at all, apparently. But yes, so obviously Tony's going to go do something, which is why that part of the dream at least feels like, he already knows what's happening. I guess we're in that state of anxiety of him knowing this stuff is going on. That's part of the dream, but it's a good thing that, like you said, and like David Chase said, there's more to the dream than just that, or it would have been kind of pointless.
Well, and what's kind of great too is that when Tony gets the news, he is kind of in like action mode. Like, I know he's just making calls, but he is actively trying to like figure out what's going on. And I guess Paulie makes a comment like, "Oh, well, no, he's not that stupid. He's not going to go do something about." I know Angelo's like a father to him, but he's not that stupid. So that kind of calms him down, and then he sees his escort's ass, and then it's kind of like, don't worry about it. Like, but it feels like maybe if he didn't hire an escort, maybe he would just be like, you know what, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna maybe make some stops, see if I can find Tony B, kind of put a stop to this. But no, it's like, don't worry about it. There's an escort here, so I'll just hang out.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what he would have done. He could have like said, tell everyone to find him immediately, like go out and look for him. He's probably in New York. Or even if he was extreme, he could have called Johnny Sack, like, you know what? I think maybe you were right about Tony. He might make a move or whatever. Like, that would have obviously not gone great either. But he just decides to do nothing and hope for the best and go to sleep. So he gets to have a nice nap for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I assume he bangs this Asian girl and then he goes to sleep.
Yep.
Right.
And he has a dream there. It's like he's like, when we transition into the dream, he's there with Carmine, right? Real Carmine.
Yep. Yeah, Carmine's in bed with him. He gets all freaked out. And Carmine? Yeah, he's so lonely. I miss my Violet. And then Tony says, "What violin?"
Yeah.
I love Sopranos is one of the best shows at people mishearing or misspeaking on things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's thrown in and it's not even like you won't even pick up on it. But I like that. And then the little thing when the phone rings and they think it's the man upstairs, God, it is David Chase. The one is on the phone that says our friend's got to go. Or whatever. So, I mean, David Chase is the god of Sopranos, so that's a nice little reference there.
Yeah, and we transition into therapy, and I'm like, this is clearly not in therapy. Like, this is clearly still... Because, I mean, sometimes whenever he gets deep into his emotional state in therapy, it will be shot differently. Like, it will be shot in a sort of weirdly dreamlike way, because we're going into his brain. But yeah, this is already on that level here, and also he would have followed up on the whole, Tony Egg thing. So I know he's asleep. We see his ex-flame, the one who died.
Gloria.
Her name as well, Gloria. Yeah,
yep.
It's Gloria's the therapist, and they just start having some fun banter there about the good old day. And then you choke the shit out of me. He even does a spit take, drink some water, because it's like referencing old sitcoms, I guess.
Yeah, they're doing the Jackie Gleason, one of these days, Alice, boom, or pow, right to the moon or whatever, right in the kisser. And that is, I mean, that kind of ties in with Tony B, because Tony B was doing Gleason, the boy, are you fat? That was like a Gleason impression. Her voice does change to Melfi a couple times here when she's talking. I believe when she says chokes the shit out of me, it changes to Melfi's voice. They have a call back to the recent episode of like, it's like taking a shit. Sometimes in here it's like taking a shit. Then they bring up childbirth, and then we kind of get into how, Gloria was too young, died too young, so she doesn't even have kids. I mean, I do like how Gloria does haunt Tony. Where I mean, I guess as we see through these dreams, I mean, there are so many dead people in his life that haunt him.
Yeah.
And he's surrounded by death.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so to wrap up that scene, it ends with her asking if he's ready for what he's got to do, which is like the theme in the dream in general. And I think, obviously I joked and complained a bit, but like that is what happens in dreams. They've captured that in a good way, where it's like, I know I need to do something. I need to go here and do this thing, but then all these things happen on the way and you're like, fuck, but I have to do this thing. And or he's trying to kind of ignore it even, but everyone's just reminding him of this thing. And she points to a TV. He sees himself in the TV in a car, and we then go to the car with his dad and like all these dead characters and Artie.
Yeah.
We've seen this before, right? I mean, this was a previous dream. Yeah.
Yes, he was in this. He was in his dad's Cadillac in a dream in season 4. I'm trying to remember like the specifics around the dream here. Tony has a dream in which he rides in the back of his father's old Cadillac, driven by Carmilla, with Ralphie riding shotgun. And then he sees Gloria sitting next to him, but then changes to Svetlana. And Dr. Melfi suggests that it signifies that Carmilla's in control and Tony wants to square the changes in the lives of the others in the car with her. Melfi asks if Ralphie changed recently. And then Tony says they're only business associates. So, this is like post Ralphie's death when he was in this car. Then we have in the car now, what his dad's driving. Johnny Boy, we have Pussy in shotgun, and then we see Mikey in the back seat, who turns into Artie for a moment. I do like the Artie theme of this episode. Like he keeps popping up. And I guess I kind of read it as like, not so much as like something bad's going to happen to Artie, but like going back to the Charmaine thing, I feel like Artie represents if Tony didn't live in the mafia lifestyle and maybe had a straight life. Like we learned in this episode that Tony maybe wanted to be a coach, like a sports coach.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no one more in Tony's life that represents kind of the square normal guy than Artie. And I feel like that's kind of that's my read on it anyways.
That's a great point. My only thought was very simple, that, he's fantasizing about his wife. So, and he doesn't think about Artie when he's awake, but Artie's going to pop up in his dream because it's like, hey, remember me? But then Artie's behavior is going to change, like, because it's a dream and whatever, but it's all expressed through that.
I think that, that's definitely there as well, too.
Yeah. So they drive up to, they're saying, we're going to drive you to the job. And they drive up to the house, like the Soprano house. And there's Carmilla saying, it's, time for us to meet Finn's parents. Because they said they were engaged. Like, that was a thing. So that makes sense that it's on his mind as well. It's a lot of back and forth with Carmilla here. He's dressed in a tracksuit again. Clothes shift, whatever. It's a dream. Now he's talking about how he had the worst fucking dream. And then this is like the bit where he's like, there's a cowboy film, and then, Tony, this is all very meta as well, where he's like, what? Give me a minute. And she's like, can you pull yourself away for once? Your head is filled with this stuff. And he's like, it's just that it's, it's better than real life, much more interesting. And then she's like, but it is your life. And then it's his life on TV. And it's like, yeah, okay, David Chase.
Yeah.
We get it. You hate me. Just say it.
Well, what I like about like the costume change kind of when he's in the house is it's very reminiscent of when they were together and Tony lived in the house, because he always would, he's not in his robe, but his hair's all sticking up and he's unkempt, and it's back when Tony was, at the Sopranos house and they had like their status quo or whatever. And Tony does want that. And then the one thing I just like about the TV stuff is because I feel like that's just everyone, though. We do a podcast discussing TV shows. Like, there is this element of like, yeah, TV is so much more interesting than life, but we do try to discuss it in terms of like how we read it with real life. So, it's meta and it's kind of on the nose and it's dreamy, like, but hey, I'm here for it.
I was making bets with myself watching it because there are so many clips that you could pull for the intro for our podcast that I thought that might have been a good one, where he's like, can you pull yourself away for once? It's so much more interesting. And then we start and you go like, yes, it is so much more interesting.
I should have. I kind of flaked on this one, and I was like, I got to pull something real quick right before we
Yeah.
start the show.
Well, and also with the TV, like, there's a lot of stuff in this episode that I do actually like. But, like, it gets to be a bit much when it's like, okay, he sees a cowboy thing, and then it's like, okay, it's relating to the cowboy thing. There's going to be a horse later, all well and good. And then, you know, talking to Carmilla, then back to the TV, and then it's like, it's a Christmas tale, a story. I mean, it's Scrooge up on there saying, like, what day is it? It's Christmas Day. Tell me what the importance of that is, Jim, please.
Yeah,
because
no,
if it's
you're right.
only like, oh, I'm like a Scrooge or whatever, like, I cannot read anything into that besides I'm like a Scrooge or whatever.
No, you're right. Yeah, I someone mentioned, like, when she says this is your life, it shows, like, is there a show or a movie like This Is Your Life? No, but because I thought someone said it, like, did that, or What a Wonderful Life, but it doesn't show that. It shows Scrooge, and I don't see the connection either of Tony to Scrooge. I mean, yeah, I guess you can maybe be like, yeah, Tony is selfish with his money and you know, pushes people away because of it, but that's pretty flimsy. So
I think
I'm
it
with you on that.
is not thinking about it. It's probably like spirits coming to visit him in the night and
Yeah, that's
changing
good.
his brain.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, but it's like I had to do a lot of thinking there, and it's kind of like it's just one. Like if they wanted to do that, like focus on that, do that as a thing. But it's just kind of cowboy, then this, then we're in the TV, but we're outside the TV, and this is still going on. This scene.
Yeah, yeah. Then we go to the Vesuvio, and Charmaine's got her breasts on display because we know Tony's been thinking about her and how she's kind of the new object of affection. When he's walking through here and he looks at the TV, I believe this is where he is seeing Gary Cooper. So that's a good connection with Tony, because as we know, Tony wants to go back to the days of Gary Cooper, the strong silent type. And I think it's the movie High Noon or something. I haven't seen it, but it is a weird, like, it's a long, we're like in Tony's view as he's walking and seeing the TV, and he doesn't turn away until basically the wall blocks the television.
Yeah, he also is losing teeth throughout all of this, which is, I wouldn't say a cliche thing, but it's like one of the known things of, like, if you're losing teeth in a dream, that's supposed to mean something. As far as I know, it's just general sort of powerlessness. I haven't really, you know, some people might say it's more specific than that, but in general, like, you're falling apart, you're losing your teeth. And incidentally, this, I can relate to this, as I am actually losing a tooth as we speak, slowly. So that's also been stressing me out and affecting my dreams. Like, I have dreams where teeth fall out, but it's because a tooth is actually falling out. Don't worry, everyone, it's going to be very expensive to fix it. Please donate to our Patreon that we don't have, or just PayPal me some money. Jacob, you can find me. Just tweet me and I'll give you my account details. Anyway, that's a side thing. His teeth are falling out, and like you said, it shows stuff about his relationship with Carmilla, especially here, well, in the kitchen, of course, but also in the restaurant where they're meeting Finn's supposed parents, and she's like, show them what you have in your pocket, and he takes out a tooth, and it's like, oh, and then there's a song being sung. A lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, and we have the return of Detective Home Alone here.
Oh, yeah, that's who it is.
Yes, yeah, he plays Finn's father. And then they just kind of went with it. Annette Bening is herself, which, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. I feel like that's just something you could relate to in a dream of, like, oh, wait. And then, I don't know, like, he's patting her on the shoulder, like, hey, wait, aren't you Annette Bening? She's like, yeah. And then he keeps bothering her. They have a bunch of Godfather references. I mean, the one I mainly picked up was when he looks for the gun in the bathroom stall. But I guess the line about I don't want my husband coming out with just his cock in his hand, I guess, is a line from The Godfather. I haven't seen it that recently, so I didn't pick that up initially.
Yeah, for sure. And there's also, like, they're saying that, oh, we never thought that Finn would amount to anything, and then it's AJ sitting there instead of Finn.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. They start talking about tooth fairy money, etc. Yeah, they've got to do this hit anyway, so... He also says, like, something bad's about to happen. That's the feeling he has in this whole dream, I think. And then Artie's, like, in a weird window in the door, like, pointing. That's super creepy. Like, they do a good job of building, like, the ominous kind of feel of what's going on. But yeah, he sings, like, a whole song there, 3 Times a Lady, and that.
And then
Go
she's
and try
kind
and
of
get the
unimpressed
guns.
in the end. Like it's like she doesn't care.
Yeah.
I guess what the when they pull the book up, I guess the book, because I forget if it's in the bathroom here or if he pulls it up later.
It's in the bathroom.
I just read on, I mean, these are on Wikipedia, but still we should call it out. There is a shot, I guess, from a deleted scene when AJ's at the dinner table. Meadows swapped out with Tracy, the stripper that Ralphie killed, but I guess they didn't use that for whatever reason. And then the book is it's a book about the first guy to turn state's witness and basically kind of prove that the mafia exists. The Velacci papers. That's a book based on the testimony of Joe Velacci, the first member of the mafia to turn state's witness, confirm the existence of the American mafia. And then they show it again when he states he did his homework.
Okay. So obviously, like, I'm at the point watching this episode where they pull out the book and he's like, oh, the book. And I'm like, yeah, the book. Like, I know there's something on Wikipedia. I'm going to read it later, but it's not like it means anything to me at the moment. So I'm just kind of like, okay.
What I was thinking during this episode, too, is this is it's kind of ahead of its time. Not to say that there weren't, like, of course, at the time when this aired, there were still internet discussion boards, and I'm sure people discussing this. But in this day and age, this would be perfect for now with Twitter and Reddit, and everyone would have immediately they would have the stills and then the comparison and then the BuzzFeed article about what this was, and then the clickbait headlines, all the references you missed in the test stream. So, hey, they're really this is what you can blame modern TV for, Jacob.
Yeah. But then I feel like David Chase would react to that and he would just stop doing all of that. He'd be like, you're all fucking idiots. Or he would just put in all the red herrings like, and I was like, what did this mean in this episode? It's like, no, it didn't mean anything. Fuck you.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we get to part of the point of the dream. They hear gunshots in the bathroom. That transitions us to Tony Egg killing your man. He's dead. It's done. Tony says, I knew this was going to happen. The mob is there. Like, not, it's an actual Frankenstein type mob. And they're asking, like, oh, why didn't you stop it, etc. There's a lot of comedic stuff here where it's Phil Leotardo, right?
Yeah, Phil. Name. Yeah. What do I get to count to?
Yeah, and he's on the floor, and and Tony Egg's gun becomes a finger gun. He shoots him, and Anyway, so they got some stuff in there. Eventually, he just kind of has to run away from this mob again, Frankenstein type scene, right?
Yeah, then it becomes basically like a literal like Frankenstein mob. Yeah, they got like dogs and like lanterns almost. I guess it's Lee Harvey Oswald that's trying to shoot Tony from the window.
I didn't pick up on that.
I didn't pick up on that either. I mean, that's what Wiki says. I don't know how true that is. I guess it kind of checks out. Just a quick Kennedy reference for you.
Sure,
then
why not?
Tony's back in a car. This time he's in the shotgun seat, and we have Ralphie and I think it was Gino, the guy who died on the toilet, and Artie's in the driver's seat this time.
Oh yeah. Artie's there. He even is at the end of the previous scene where he's like, "Come on, come over here," and he pulls him away, and then they're in the car. And then we cut to him fucking Charmaine. I'm fucking bored going through this, Jim. I'll be honest. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm sorry, The Sopranos.
Yeah. Well, and then he's on his high horse. He's on his high horse in the house, and he needs to get off his high horse and make things right with Carmilla.
This part I liked, even if it was like, I would have liked to have just this clip and like put that on Twitter or whatever, like The Sopranos, the greatest show ever, and it's just him on a horse in the room, like the smell and shit all over the place, and he's like, "I'll clean up after her." Oh, you always say that, and he just leaves the room slowly on the horse. But yeah, you're right, he's on his high horse. Makes sense.
Well, he's on his high horse, plus he's got his whores. Horse. I mean. They always are doing horse and whores on this show, that going back to Ralphie and the prostitute, or stripper, I should say. Not, she wasn't a prostitute. That might as well have been. But yeah, no, I do agree. Kind of at this point, I'm getting a little weary. Like when they're in the street, he's being chased by the mob. He's fucking Charmaine. Even the horse part, I'm getting a little weary of the dream sequence because it's been going on for a while. But when it gets to the school and the coach, I like all that stuff. I think that's...
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff because that's where it's not really at all about Tony Egg and it's only about Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
Which is nice because this is built up like it's the fucking biggest thing. Now, we haven't seen this coach before, right? I mean, this is new, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we haven't seen this coach before. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
new. But I mean, it ties into Tony either being never having the makings of a varsity athlete or just him talking about sports with AJ and his time being an athlete. Like it's all washes out.
I was sure that he would say that line. And the when he calls Carmilla later when he's awake and says that he had one of those like coach whatever dreams, that was really good too because it's like this is clearly something that's been with him for a long time. And like you said, it's like him reflecting on if I was with Charmaine, if I was a coach, if I had a regular life, what would life be like then? But of course he approaches as if like he's gotta whack this guy. And at first I'm like, oh, it's gonna be some big mob person, but no, it's his coach, and that makes it feel a lot like the name of the episode makes sense with the test stream of arriving at school unprepared, or your coach saying you did a bad job or you never amounted to nothing, which is basically the content of the scene.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone in this episode's good, and I mean, I guess at this point it's season 5, so they do trust the writers and directors and stuff. But it is kind of like Gandolfini, especially. You got to be worried sometimes when you're reading and then trying to act this stuff out. Like, is this going to look stupid? Is this going to play properly? But like, because Gandolfini's like he's scared, kind of. He's got his gun. He's confronting, his high school varsity coach. But like it plays great. And then the fact that when he's trying to kind of like boast about himself to his coach, like, yeah, I'm successful. I mean, I guess it almost ties in a little bit to what I was talking about last week with Chris, and when he's in the car crying because you have that little kid still inside you. We all have that person inside us when someone from when we were in our like developmental years really affected us and kind of haunts us in a way. And especially Tony, we've already talked about, he's haunted by actual dead people. I mean, maybe this guy's dead, but it doesn't matter. He's just haunted by, the what could have been, and not so much that I feel like this guy was a negative in Tony's life. I mean, I think it's the opposite, and maybe that's why it like affects him more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right, and they talk about like he said he tries to brag, he tries to establish who he is. Like, I'm actually fine, I'm doing great, even though this is his dream. It's his own psyche telling him these things from out of the mouth of his old coach, like reflecting on how, as we said, as Tony B and people beneath him in the hierarchy would say, like, he's on top of the world, why is he not happy? But that's why the show works so well, because it's always touched on like the American dream, and you're gonna, like, when you have it all, you're gonna be even more miserable. Congrats. It just happens to be a mob boss going through those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, whether it be like his bullets turn to like mush or whatever, but, I've had those dreams where maybe you're trying to scream or speak and you can't speak, or things don't work the way they're supposed to, because, again, it's just your anxiety or your stress just kind of coming through in your subconscious here. But, yeah, I loved all this stuff because I get sometimes, and especially when you're pushing it so far like this, having this long dream sequence, you open yourself up where it's you're going to have silly things that don't work. But Sopranos, when they do make the dream stuff work, it really works. Because I still come back to, it was fairly recent, I forget if it was this season or last season, when Tony goes up to that house and then like the shadow Olivia's in there and he at the screen door. Like, so when they hit some of the stuff, it really works. And then this kind of has shades of that because it does feel like almost like a horror movie in a weird way. Like initially when he's walking through, like the way it's lit and the way he's walking through the hall and kind of the build. So I think it at the very least when it builds to this, and then even on top of that, the call with Carmilla, I think is like such a great moment. Like it's a simple thing, but it's a nice reminder of like the bond they have, even though things are the way they are between them. It's like a nice, sweet moment, and especially the fact that this is a regular dream he has that she knows, and is like, "Oh yeah, you're unprepared as usual."
Yeah. So, but what does the Toblerone mean? That's the real question, Jim. He wakes up and he tries to have some Toblerone, and then Christopher gets it, and I think it means Christopher's gonna kill him next season, Jim. I don't know. Everything's got so much meaning. No, I mean, yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. It's a good point, especially with Carmilla later. That's a great scene, and we couldn't have that without all of this. And in general, yeah, the coach scene, all good stuff. And then we get to him waking up. I think the bullets turn to shit, by the way. It looks like shit to me. I don't know if it is, but
or it turns to Toblerone. Is Toblerone chocolate? I don't even know what it is.
It is. Do you not know? Yes, it's chocolate. But anyway, don't you have Toblerone in every airport? Is that just in Europe? Like everyone's like, buy a huge fucking Toblerone, tax free or whatever. And it's.
I mean, now that I look at it, it looks familiar. I don't know if I've ever had it before.
Oh, well, it's all right. It's chocolate. Like we're not sponsored by Toblerone, so I don't give a shit. But I mean, even Tony doesn't eat it. But anyway, he wakes up.
Ever since Chris gave up the drugs, he's got a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, we know that. We know that. So, I mean, just Tony waking up, going to the mini bar, getting the water, and the way he drinks it, the way he breaks the Toblerone, all that, it's such Tony stuff. You know how I think they say, I don't know who said it or in what context or whatever, but like acting, if you can walk, if you can walk as a character, like that's almost the hardest thing. Because if you walk like you don't think anyone's watching, but then on top of that, there's a character in it and it's not like overstated. You just are this person and you're like, he's got so much going on in his head right then and it all adds up. And like, that is not easy. It's probably a lot easier when it's like, you murdered my sister. I'm going to kill you. Oh, I hate you. Like lots of big expression. But him walking and drinking and eating and breathing, all that stuff has always been grade A from Tony Soprano.
Absolutely. Yeah. And because it's like the things you don't notice, just the small moments, the small, like just normal moments. And Gandolfini, destroys it. So yeah, Chris shows up. He gets the news, kind of what he knew was going to happen, happened. And I like that it's even like, not that it's like a weird vibe between them, but I guess Chris in a weird way kind of sees like, oh yeah, nice, sweet. And it's like, you're just like a lonely poor guy. I have a good one. I'll take your Toblerone.
Right, but it's Billy. Philly is fine. It's Billy Leotardo, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So Frank Vincent, who plays Phil Leotardo, I guess he just got winged, but I guess Billy was his son. Is that what they were saying? Now we do have to throw this. Does this counts then? Even though we don't see the body yet, we do have to throw this up on the old counter, right?
Hell yeah, it's in the dream. And now it's he did. Yeah, it counts. I assume it's that. Kid from when he actually killed Angelo. I don't know. It counts. I'll count this one. We gotta.
Well, it's funny because I'm looking up the character right now, and yeah, I would, if you gun to my head and you were like, oh, what was the first episode that Billy Leotardo showed up? I'd be like, oh, they just put him in this episode to kill him later. But no, he's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes before this.
Yeah. Well, if he is the guy who was always following around, Phil, then I know who it is. But yes, and it is. I think I Googled it. It's that guy who was also...
Yeah, okay. And it's Phil's younger brother.
Okay. So he's dead and gone. And yeah, like you said, he's in a lot of episodes. Definitely counts. Let's put it on the boards.
Yeah, put it up on the board. Let me pull up my counter. Let me pull up my thing here.
Gotcha.
So now we're at the 50 mark.
Hell yeah. We're up to 50 deaths. Now, yeah. The walkouts. We're going to need more therapy scenes in this final season if things are going to balance out even a little. I know it's not a competition, but still, 50 deaths. Which, for a show where we say, like, there's not a lot of mob violence in this. Like, we're on season 5. There's been 50 deaths. It's like almost 1 per episode. Like, it's still a fair bit of death.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of violence, too.
Yeah, and even when there's not death or violence, like you said, the show is so much about death and him being haunted by the people who are dead around him and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the shots of Central Park, and we see it again real quick, but now at nighttime, or like, I guess, right before dawn. And yeah, it just kind of like, it still seems dreamlike. It seems a little weird. And as we already mentioned, I do think it's a very sweet, nice moment. They're both, well, Tony's not quite half asleep, but Carmilla's half asleep, and they're just kind of on the phone, BSing. Because you would almost expect when Tony says, like, I'm looking at Central Park right now. From what I know of, like, what we've seen usually of the Carmilla Tony scenes, it's always like them going at each other, and you almost want to be like, which one of you whores did you bring to the Plaza Hotel or something like that? But no, it's like kept as almost like it's a sweet moment, and she's kind of there for him here as he's dealing with all this shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like thinking, like, they never even got to go on. Well, maybe he's always trying to bring her on holidays and vacations to make up for stuff, and they never ended up going. But I still felt that she would have been like, "Oh, you're in the Plaza now, and you can't pay my gas bill or whatever." But yeah, so they like you said, they do get to keep it as a sort of sweet moment there. Well, he's just talking about his dream, and he asks who she ate with when she went to Artie's restaurant. Sounds like maybe he's a little bit like checking up on her. He doesn't want her to see anyone else, certainly. And he can hear the dog, and it's just one of those moments.
Yes. Yep. And then speaking of cut to black, it cuts to black, but the dialogue plays over the black screen as they're still kind of talking. Like, is it light where you are yet? And I guess, from what they're talking about in Sopranos sessions, it's almost like when you're falling asleep, but still, I don't know, listening or talking or something. Like maybe that's Carmilla falling asleep. Who knows? Either way, I think it's kind of a nice choice. Actually coming off of too, because the previous episode did a different thing kind of with the credits as well, as we talked about. That had the credits play over like the actual scene as Tony's walking down the street. This one had just the dialogue go over a black screen before going into the credits.
Yeah, I also like that moment because of the whole dreamlike nature, obviously, of the whole episode. It's a nice way to wrap it up, especially him like repeating a line he already asked earlier, if it's light where you are, which is like it's the same time zone. Like, you do that when you're in different time zones, Tony, but it's like New York is a different world. He's also higher up, so it's going to get lighter sooner there, right? That's how that works, I think.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a nice moment. So overall, when we headed into the dream, I was like, oh, here we fucking go. But there were moments that were really great and certainly sort of made up for any of the slack in certain scenes, I feel, because there were some really great moments inside the dream sequence. I would also say if we had this episode, I don't know, it's episode 5 or whatever, and it was just this, and we're just exploring his psyche, that wouldn't be as interesting. Weirdly, the fact that this stuff is happening off screen sort of lends credence to what's going on here, if that makes sense. Like, because the plot of the season has not been the fastest ever, but now shit is like, actually, we know stuff is happening, so we sort of have the same anxiety as Tony of being locked in this dream and stuff's going on and we're not allowed to see it and he's not allowed to control it. So it is, I think, I mean, if it was the last episode of the season, Buffy style, I don't think that would have worked either. But based on the placement, I know stuff's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, the final 2 episodes that are big. I have honestly got very little clue of what. I feel like, I mean, Tony Eggs, it feels like he's obviously in hot water, as Tony says here, because Christopher's like, I guess TB's fucked. And he's like, we're all fucked.
Yeah.
Because this is like, shit's fucked now. Shit's going to be fucked. And I look forward to seeing how fucked shit's going to be these next 2 episodes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. It is like, it's the perfect placement for something like this, but also it's like a weird, ballsy, interesting placement because, like we kind of talked about at the beginning, like shit is happening, but David Chase wants to be like, yeah, shit's happening over there, but I want you to focus right here in this little piece of the piece of the frame while all this other shit's going on over here. So, but that's what I love about The Sopranos. And yes, 2 episodes to go in the season, and then entering the final season.
Very true. Now, so if you want to share your thoughts on season 5, do send them to showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. That's where you can reach us. Once again, that's showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. You can also search for Shows What You Know on iTunes and leave us a review, or Cut to Black on iTunes and leave us a review. Either one would be very much appreciated. We also have a whole host of other shows at showswhatyouknow.com. It's all very predictable at this point. It's all Shows What You Know everywhere, except Twitter, where we're Shows What You Know with the letter U instead of the word you, just to kind of confuse everyone and not make you follow us on Twitter. But, I mean, you can if you really want to.
Yeah, blame Twitter, though. It was like a character limit.
I know. Like, we don't like character limits. We like talking a lot about this stuff. And I actually had a flash in this episode of while we were discussing it just now, I just imagined David Chase and what he would think of you and me, Jim, and I felt a little ashamed. Like, I don't think you would enjoy us sitting here and talking about his show.
Yeah.
But hey, hopefully you enjoy it, dear listener, and you can find more on our website.
Yes, and there's just one thing left to say.
What's that, Jim?
Cut to black.